Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We're having a great day so far. Today, I'd like to talk to you about some strategies for when your student gets stuck on a word. So, I'm sure this has happened multiple times. You are reading along with your student, they're reading fine, and they get stuck and they look at you, right? And you say, well, figure out the word. And they don't say, I don't know the word. And then it becomes a big problem. Well, today I want to give you some strategies that when that happens, you have some steps to take to help them figure out the word that they're thinking about, and that will help them learn to do that in the future. So, first thing first is prompt your student to look at the word. So, a lot of the times, the students will look at the picture, they'll look at you, they'll look off into space, and they're thinking, but we want them to look at the word and focus in on that word. I tell my students all the time, the word gives you everything you need to figure it out. So tell them first to look at the word, maybe touch the word that they're thinking about so you know which one they're on. And then the next thing they can try is to slide through the sounds, which is basically just sounding it out. So it may be a word that they don't know how to sound out. It might have a pattern that they haven't learned or doesn't follow the typical rules. But we want them to try to sound out the word, each letter at a time, say the sound of that letter, and see if they can figure out from there. After they sound it out, we want them to slide through or blend that word together. So I have some words here I'm going to share with you just to have it as an example. So you can see here we have cat and cabinet. Okay, and for example, if your student is reading the word cat and they don't know how to read that word, you could say, look at the word and let's slide through the sound or sound it out. So they would go each sound at a time, k, at, and then you would want them to blend it together. So you'd want them to say cat after that. A lot of the times kids will sound it out, know it's cat, and then keep reading, but we want them to really say that word as a whole word again to help them to understand that word and know that they've got to read the whole word to understand the rest of the sentence. Same thing for the word cabinet underneath for maybe a higher student. Another thing you could have them do is have them look for parts that they know. So if they're already pretty good at sounding words out, you could have them look at the word cat and say, do you see a little word in there that you already know? And they might recognize the word at. Or for example, in cabinet, they might recognize cab or in or net inside of there. And that's just another way to help them figure out the word and make them more comfortable. Oh, I already know one half of that word. I can figure out the rest. So look at the word, sound it out or slide through the sounds. Look for chunks or parts that they know. The next thing that they can do, or you can help them to do, is break the word apart. So for cat, you could take that word and just break it into chunks, the beginning sound k and the ending sound or the ending group of sounds at. K, at, what is that word? And they might recognize it as cat. Same for cabinet. You could take it just cab, knit, and see if they could blend it together that way. So breaking those words apart is really good for bigger words and for older students. But sometimes students' brains just work better in chunks. And so rather than sounding it out one word at a time, if they recognize the word at or they want to do the beginning and the rest of the word, that's perfectly fine. Another thing you could do is have them try a different sound. So once students get into usually about second grade, the first grade, they're learning long vowels. So if they try one and it doesn't sound right, like for example, they say eight, and you can say, well, try the other sound for a, at, and maybe they'll get it that way. So trying a different vowel sound is a very helpful way to help them figure out a word, especially if they are able to know both sounds of the vowels at that point. Once they figure out a word, it is very important for them to go back and reread the word or the sentence. I'm going to stop sharing these words with you. And that really helps them to make sure they're comprehending the whole sentence. So we want them to understand that we're reading not just to read each word and be done. We're reading to understand and enjoy. So if we just read the word and we figure out the word and maybe it's taken a little time, most of the time the students have forgotten everything else that they've just read about in the sentence. So our brain can only hold so much working at one time. So it's very important that they go back after they figure out the word and read the sentence again with the correct word so they understand what they just read. The other prompts I mentioned at the beginning, things that we do probably the most is ask them if it would make sense or if that word makes sense and looking at the picture. So those are definitely good strategies to use. But I think what we're finding with current research is the best way to go about it that gives us lifelong learning and gives them strategies for any word they come across is to be looking and focusing in right on that word and the sounds in that word. And then they can think afterwards, okay, does that make sense? Yes or no? That doesn't make sense. Maybe I'll go back and try a different strategy and looking at the picture to help us understand. Big thing I tell my own daughter and the students that I work with is that there may be books and things that you're reading like instructions or a newspaper or an online article that doesn't have a picture. So what do you do then? So we don't want them to depend too much on the picture because there may not always be one, especially on doing testing and things like that. So hopefully these help. I will write up a little thing and maybe have Mrs. Godfrey put it by my video in the newsletter so you have them and maybe you can write them down. But just as a recap, we want them first to look at the word. We want them to sound it out or slide through the sounds and blend it together. Look for parts that they know in the word. Look for ways to chunk the word apart instead of sounding out each letter. Trying a different vowel sound. Going back and rereading the sentence once they figured it out and rereading more if they need to, if they forgot more of the page. And also thinking about if it makes sense and using the picture. So I hope these are helpful for you. Hopefully it makes reading time a little bit easier, a little less frustration at home when you're reading together, and you can have some fun. So have a great rest of the day. Thank you.